recorded that. Let me record another, a little something else. Hello,
Hi.
hello. We're just two sluts who are gonna suck on each other's toes, lick whipped cream off of them.
Why did you have to go to the toilet?
No! I can't!
Well, Mikey and I are big fans of horror. We've been fans for a very long time. I've been a fan since I was a fucking child. How about you? Like, have you been watching it since you were, a toddler? Were you born with it? Were you,
No, when I was young, I was very scared of horror movies. In particular, Friday the 13th, that I had a lot of traumatic experiences with. Didn't sleep without a light on for a long time. But then I gradually just decided I wanted to start getting over it.
Mm-hmm.
So, starting with the Friday the 13th series, I just started watching them one at a time and gradually increasing my exposure to it until it was something that I really loved. And then I went out to this series and that series, and yeah, just slowly over time became something I loved and not something I was very afraid of. I want to be afraid now.
Right.
Like more than I can be.
Yeah, like with me, it started off when I was 4. My dad kind of decided to stop spanking me and was like, "Oh, hey, if you misbehave, I'll fucking make you watch a scary movie." I'm like, "No, please don't." And then I misbehave. He sat me and he's like, "You get your fucking ass off the chair. I'm gonna beat the shit out of you." So I'm like crying. He puts in Firestarter, with Drew Barrymore as a child. That's actually funny with what we're about to talk about. And I remember I'm like crying, and as the movie progresses, I'm just like, "Oh, this is interesting." And then like from there, it went to like Hellraiser, and then Chucky, and then this and that. And I was just like, I actually like this. And it went from him like punishing me that way to just taking my collection that I started, because I started collecting movies from there. Sometimes I wouldn't even return movies to Blockbuster when I was a kid because I wanted to keep them. But
We used to do that, and then Sean Connery would call our house and yell at us.
That's fucked up.
He'd be like, "This is Sean Connery just calling to remind you that you have an overdue rental.
Right.
So get it back." And then it would be like, Sean Connery, voice impersonator.
Oh.
That's a real story.
Him? That's actually a real story. What the fuck?
That's how Hollywood Video had like voice impersonators making
Oh,
that really happened. A voice like that. "You have an overdue rental, so get it back to the store."
Damn. Well, now I see where Bane got it from. Fuck.
Yeah.
Well, one of the movies that we've recently watched and we were really interested in talking about, especially just mainly because we've seen like little videos pop out, and with one of the sequels coming out is the Scream series. And we started with the first Scream, which is one of my all-time favorites. Sadly, I watched Scary Movie before I watched Scream. Like, I had heard of Ghostface and everything, but it was mainly like I grew up with Scary Movie, and I was like, I don't know if Scream will do it for me. And when I watched it, I kind of saw everything coming, but at the same time, it was like, like the horror, it was like, haha, I remember this funny part, and then that scene would happen. It's like, damn, that's not really that funny. And it was, it was like getting to me, and I was like, fuck, this is actually good. And then from there, I just watched the sequel. But the first one, and especially like with the opening scene and everything, was one of my favorites. So
the opening scene stuck with me for a long time because maybe it was the last summer that I went to overnight camp. I think I was 14 or 15. One of the counselors had a promo video for this movie. So that was like something the studios would put out, as like a teaser, and it was just that scene. The video ended at that point. And oh my god, I was like enraptured by it. I don't even know if we can hit upon everything that's going on in this scene. Off the top of my head, it's one of the most elaborate scenes that's going on in any of these horror movies.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's something you definitely need to watch more than once to have any real semblance of the layout of the house, because there's a giant house with 3 big main doors. There's a main door at the back patio, there's the front door, and then as she's walking towards the front door, there's like a little side patio on her left.
Yeah.
Then there's the kitchen with the island in the middle of it, the giant living room, and it's just a lot to keep track of. But we can talk about how that plays into our theory about who's doing what there.
Yeah, definitely. Because the first time you watch it, you're like, "Oh my god, this psycho! Like, he's so quick. He's making this call and at the same time killing, and he's over here and now he's over there." But then, like, rewatching it again, you're knowing what it's like, I wonder who did who. Like who was doing one thing and who was doing another thing. And I remember, and then I remember watching some YouTube videos of people like explaining their own theories, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense, this other thing makes sense, but I don't know about this one little thing, and it just gets you questioning other things and paying more attention to stuff that happens in the movie. So when we watched it this week, the whole time I'm just like paying attention, like just observing and just looking in the background or looking on the sides of the screen just to see if I could catch anything.
Yeah, for sure. And, a spoiler alert for a movie that's 24 years old, but there's two killers. It's hard for me to put myself in the mindset of when I first watched it, but I do remember that I did not know there was two killers, and it was kind of a surprise. So when you watch it in hindsight, it's fairly obvious that there's no way that one person could be doing all of this. But I think they did it well enough. They hid that fact well enough that it wouldn't be obvious to someone who didn't know.
Yeah, they really did.
So the first thing we talked about it while we were watching the movie that I wanted to mention was that this movie really started the trend that went on for the next like 10 to 15 years even, where like the horror movies were self-referential and they were making fun of the conventions and the tropes within them and how you could turn them on their head. So that like now the new like surprise these days I feel like is when things just go according to plan, because everything back then got into a point of subverting your expectations. Now if like the movie went exactly in a linear way, it would make more sense, it would be more of a surprise. Like it got to the point where the person you least suspect would be the killer so often that now it would be the person you most suspect would be the surprising twist. But all that is a lead up to say that nowadays it would be fairly common, but back then you would have never killed your biggest star in the movie. Definitely not in the first scene. And I love the choice that Wes Craven made of casting Drew Barrymore as the victim in the first scene, because nowadays Neve Campbell's famous, Skeet Ulrich's kind of famous, Matthew Lillard's kind of famous, David Arquette, Courtney Cox. But at that time, Drew Barrymore was the biggest star. She'd been in the most movies. She'd been in the most named movies. And you would have never expected that she would die right away. So I love the choice that Wes Craven made, that he killed her first, because it sets the audience's expectation that literally anyone can die.
Yeah. And I think originally Drew Barrymore was supposed to play Sydney, but Drew Barrymore read the script for the opening scene. She's like, "Oh my god, I fucking love this. How about you just kill me off in the first 10 minutes? And Wes is like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And
so you think she contributed to that decision then? This will really surprise the audience.
Yeah, I remember I think I've heard from people, that have been saying that, Drew Barrymore did say that she really fell in love with the scene. I don't know if she's the one that suggested it or if it was Wes Craven that told her, "Do you want to play this scene?" But I know originally she was set to star as Sydney. And then that was changed, and then she did the opening scene, obviously, and then like you said, it kind of sets the mood where it's like, ooh, everyone's seeing Drew Barrymore, and like you say, she's a big star, and she was really big back in the 90s, and everyone goes to see it, and she's in the front poster and everything, and then bam, she fucking dies in the first 10 minutes. You're like, oh shit. Well, she can die. Who's next? And then, you see the next, and it just makes you question the whole thing. And it's just really interesting, and it's fucking amazing to me.
Drew Barrymore's playing Casey. She's a high school student. It's late at night. Her parents aren't home. She's waiting for her boyfriend to come over, and they're going to watch a movie. She's making stovetop popcorn, which, does that even sound recognizable to you? Like, are you old enough for that to have been a thing? Because they were the best. I don't know if it's just the way the heat is applied, but those things were awesome.
Brother, I'm 67 years old. Of course I know this.
But so anyway, at this point, we know there's two killers, right? So we can just say that off the top.
Yeah, obviously.
It's Bill and Stewie. Yeah, it's or
Bill and Stewie.
Yeah. Stewie.
Stewie and Billy. Billy and Stewie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's literally Billy and Stu. Like, you know, we've this movie is so, like, I'm sorry if this is your first, why the fuck are you even here watching a podcast of the fucking movie?
Watch the movie first.
Yeah, watch the movie. Don't yeah.
Anyway, so we know they must both be there, and one of them is calling her to taunt her on the phone. It starts off like he's kind of trying to vaguely flirt with her. He's being a little mysterious. She's kind of into it. And this kind of like pissed me off. I don't know how you felt, but she was like right away to say like, no, she didn't have a boyfriend when the caller asked. So she seemed like if the guy was like cute and charming enough, she was like kind of willing to, you know, go along with it or whatever would have happened there. What I wanted to ask you about is, as this opening part where they're just beginning to talk to her and they haven't really been too threatening yet, just mysterious. At what point in this whole interaction do you think that Steve showed up, Casey's boyfriend?
Damn. That's actually a good question. I could definitely see him showing up maybe the second time she hangs up, which is whenever she said, oh, they have a ton of numbers, bye now. You know, and then she hangs up and then kind of like giggles or chuckles to herself, and then like the scene cuts to her turning on the stove. I could definitely see like in between that time, you know, maybe she's like getting impatient. Meanwhile, Stu is coming up and they kidnap him. I could see it there.
You'd have to think that okay, one of them is on the phone, one of the killers. The other one is waiting an ambush on Steve. Somehow they've either cased this place earlier in the day and overheard Casey making her plans, because they had to obviously be aware that Steve was coming to pull this off. Or maybe they talked about it at school the day before or something. But you would think that one of them would have to be on the phone watching her, but also simultaneously having either like a flashlight or some kind of hand signal to signal the other one when Steve is coming for that one to do the ambush.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. I think, and I watched another YouTuber by the name of Zach Cherry. He actually has a really good video where he explains a layout of the whole thing, and I actually do have to agree with him when he said that I feel Billy is the one on the phone. I really do feel like Billy was on the phone. And that Stu was pretty much like the big arms, you know, like the muscle who was taking care of everything else. Like, because I feel like Billy could definitely get in your head, especially with his knowledge of horror and shit like that. Like, you don't really see him watching horror movies or talking about them, but he will quote them. And, you know, in a scene later on, which we can talk about later, you know, he's in the horror section. But I really do feel that Billy was the one on the phone interacting with Casey, while Stu was the one waiting, you know, for Steve to get there and then take him down and then tie him up and then take him to the back. Right.
They had to have knocked him out, probably from behind. I don't know, with a bat or something like that. When we finally do see him tied up, he's already bloody.
Yeah.
So somehow he was attacked. I actually think there's a compelling argument to be made for both Billy and Stu being the one who's in the mask actually doing the killing. You know, while the other one's on the phone. Unless, of course, they both were in costume. And so once the phone calls are over, there's two of them running around in a costume.
Yes, I do agree with... I feel like Billy was on the phone. Stu was the one running around. I feel Stu was the one that broke in first, and as he did, and, you know... Casey went to run, I feel that's when Billy was like getting dressed and stuff, and then he joined Stu inside. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, there's two main reasons that I think that it's likely that Stu is either the actual killer or the main one that's prowling around the house when they are prowling, because it'll be established later that Stu was Casey's ex-boyfriend. So you would have to think that he has spent time at the house, like we already talked about, there's 3 different entrances. It's kind of an elaborate setup inside.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't want to be fumbling around having no idea what you're doing. He's the one with the knowledge of how the house is laid out, and so he would kind of know how to get around it better. But also, they set up this whole thing through what goes on later with the other characters, that people seem to be wanting to kill their own girlfriends. At that point, he's called her and she's hung up twice.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to mention really quick that joke they put in there where they talk about how scary the Nightmare on Elm Street series is. And she says, well, the first one is, but the rest suck.
Yeah. I think Wes Craven later said that he kind of regretted saying that because he did have involvement with the 3rd one, and then he made the 7th one, the new Nightmare. So he's like, shit, I'm throwing shit on my own stuff. So, but I do love that.
She starts to first become aware, I think, that something is going on when he asks her name repeatedly, and he says, "'Cause I want to know who I'm looking at."
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and she goes, what do you mean? Oh, I want to know who I'm talking to. That's not what you said. So she's walking around, locking the doors, and checking out the window.
Honestly, if that was me, I'd be like, I'm sorry, what was that? And he says, I'm talking to. I'm like, okay. And I'd be looking around, maybe give a little shoulder. I feel like that's what Spice would do too. Be a little slut. Mm-hmm. She'd probably bend over or something, exactly. Not knowing that she's like, he means it like in a really violent way. But she's like, oh, I got a stalker, like all happy and shit. I could just see Spice doing something stupid like that.
Yes. So this is where he starts to go off the rails completely. He calls her right back, and he's telling her, warning her not to hang up on me. She's saying, they have 900 numbers for that, don't talk to me, and hangs up again. So when he calls back the 3rd time, now he's angry. He's lost all pretense of this is, charming or friendly, and he just directly threatens her, if you hang up on me again, I'll cut you like a fish. Oh my God. And that's where she reveals that she has a boyfriend. And he's big, and he plays football, and he'll kick the shit out of you. And I never noticed it, you did too, that at this point she's backing up towards the back patio.
Yeah.
And the light in the patio isn't on yet, but you can see that Steve is already sitting there.
You can see the outline of Steve. We were watching it, and as she's backing up, I see it, and I tell Mikey, and he's like, oh, I've never noticed that before. And I'm like trying to pay attention to everything. I'm like, right. So that was really interesting, just to see him kind of just, that was interesting.
So this is where I think she flips into complete panic mode. She's scared, but she's like feeling a little secure knowing that Steve's coming over. But once she backs up and he says, your boyfriend's name wouldn't be Steve, would it? Mm-hmm. And he has her turn on the back patio, and Steve's there. Now she knows she's
like, this some real shit. This is like, this is more than just, a fucking stalker. This is where Spice would go to the bedroom and fucking handcuff herself.
Yeah. You know what just occurred to me too? Mm-hmm. That, some of the other movie serial killers, like Michael and Jason, they don't really have any kind of emotional input into it. They just kill. Mm-hmm. They're going to kill. They're like a shark. They're going to come and kill you. Mm-hmm. I wonder now if this is like Wes Craven's thing, because first it was Freddy and now it's these killers. They don't want to just kill you. They really want to emotionally fuck with you first and then kill you. Because they're getting off on how scared they're making her.
Oh yeah, definitely. You could even sense it, the next scene is him playing the so-called game with her, and I guess I'll get back to it, but I really enjoy how, he kind of warms her up and just says, okay, first question, name the killer in Halloween, and because she's so, fucking terrified, she can't even fucking think straight. It's an easy
question, but when you're that terrified, it's hard to,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've been in that mood. I've been in that moment where it's like, you can't think straight, and you get very frightful, and it's like, everything's bouncing around, you feel sick, you're shaking, and your brain's just like, mush and shit. But she ends up getting the first question, and it's like, okay, cool. And then he says, now for the real question. It's like, oh shit, there's more. At this point, my poor girl, that's just a warm-up.
Right. And then they throw in the very tricky question. Now, I just want to say quickly too, it seems at least as important to them to frighten her as it is to actually kill her. Because you got to realize that every moment that they don't actually just go and kill her is more risk that the parents will come home, more risk that police will come by or someone will have the opportunity to call them. Every moment that she's alive is a better chance she can escape. So it's very important for them to fuck with them. Yeah. First, which indicates the personal motive, because why else, if you were just going to kill someone for a home invasion or a robbery or something, whatever, if you really had a desire to fuck with them first, that indicates a highly personal motive. So it never is explicitly said, but I think that it must be that she dumped Stu.
I could see that.
And that's why Stu was easy to be talked into with Billy. He had a lot of anger for her already.
Oh yeah, definitely. And from, later on in the movie, which we'll talk about later, you can definitely see it there with Billy being the big brain behind everything. Yeah. But, so the next question that the killer asks is, name the killer in Friday the 13th. And it's like...
And this one really plays upon, if you were thinking clearly, you probably would have came up with it, but you're in your fearful state, you're not thinking clearly.
And it's like they knew that. That's why I feel like that's another reason they had to fuck with her, because she had to get it, wrong. And maybe that also played into that as well. You could definitely see that, just to get her like worked up, and she's so adamant. And I was too. I remember I was like, "It is Jason. What the fuck?" And then
for anybody in the world, if you were to say Friday the 13th, they're gonna think Jason.
Oh yeah, that's Jason definitely. And then when he says, "Oh, it was Mrs. Voorhees that fucking was in the original," Jason didn't come into the sequel, which, like you said, it's like, well, technically he was in the first one, but he did start killing in the second one.
He wasn't the killer until the second one.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and the whole issue we're going on with the lawsuit involving the video game and everything is that the original author's intent was never for Jason to be the villain.
I wonder
he was supposed to be a victim.
Yeah. We'll definitely have to jump into them in the Friday the 13th series.
Yeah, so he gets her really good. He's like, "No, it's Jason! I've seen that movie 20 goddamn times!" Oh, well, then you should know. It's Mrs. Voorhees. Jason didn't show up till the sequel.
And, so yeah, she lost, but there's a bonus question for Miss Casey.
Well, let's hold on. When she lost, so they have her turn on the lights.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
see Steve get gutted.
Yeah, it's like, there's a bonus question for her. Thankfully, sadly, because she got it wrong, Steve is out, and I wonder how he fucking did that. Like, did he just run past with his blade out, going like "Rear," and just fucking rip them open, or was he waiting behind him the whole time and then just turned around, gutted him, and then ran off, or got behind him again?
I think he probably was crouched behind him and he was waiting the whole time. And there's a split second before she turns the light on. So the next question that they give her for the bonus question is, which door am I at? There's two main doors. There's the back patio and the front door. Since we now know there's two killers, I think it's obvious that they must have both been in the costume, and one of them's at either door. Mm-hmm. So there is no way to win that question. If
she would have said, "Oh, well, you just killed Steve from the patio door. You're there," he could be like, "Haha, I'm actually at the front door because that's my friend." But then if she would have said, "You're at the front door," it's like, I literally just killed him, so fuck you. So yeah, there was no way to win that. Their intention from the very beginning was to kill her.
Right, they just wanted to fuck with her first, and it's a good way to fuck with your victim is to give them the illusion that they can escape.
Yeah, just that false hope. Now we have good old Casey running, and this is the point where pretty much the audience is like, "Oh shit, who is it?" Like what's gonna happen? And then you get the first glimpse of the killer run past wearing all black.
And I think that must be Stu, because he's the only one that would feel comfortable with the inside of the house.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. And then Miss Casey sneaks through the back, which I thought was very smart. Now the whole time, just like, "Come on, girl, you got this, bitch. You fucking got this. Just stay back there. Don't move. Don't do anything."
Yep. But yeah, so the killer pops up in the window and scares her, and he takes that moment to dive out at her. Mm-hmm. This is where I start to wonder, where I think that there could be arguments that each one of them is the killer, because the killer makes one stab thrust through her chest,
Mm-hmm.
which to me, where it landed, it looked like it probably penetrated her heart. I don't think that she could have survived that, even if there were immediate medical attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think he got her like right in the heart. I think that was purposeful. But after he stabs her, he gets on top of her and starts choking her. So at the end of the movie, we see that Billy's going to be on top of Sydney choking her.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like choking is like an MO of Billy.
Well, this is
More
what
than
I
Stu.
feel. I feel that whenever she, when she raises her head and Ghostface turns around and shows us a mask for the first time, I think that's Stu. I really do think that's Stu, and she knocked him out, and he's kind of like hurt, because you hear him go, ugh, and then when she goes around the corner, and she looks at her parents, I feel like at that point Billy saw Stu and just ran at her. So it was the second one is Stu jumping at her.
Yes.
I mean Billy, sorry.
So I still think it's possible that it was Stu because of the whole kill your own ex thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everything we're talking about right now indicates that who actually probably killed her was Billy. I think Billy must have been on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Stu must have knocked Steve out and killed Steve. Stu was the one prowling through the house, but Billy's the one that lunged out and stabbed Casey.
Yeah, and you could also. This is another thing that I'm gonna have to. I'm definitely gonna add Zach Cherry's channel, so anyone wants to watch his version of the video where he explains some stuff, I'm definitely gonna link him down. But it's explained that they have different ways of killing. If you noticed, I don't know if you noticed, but
I think he's the one that put in my mind to pay attention to that one of them likes to rely specifically on choking.
Yeah, but also if you notice, Billy is the type to kind of like hold up the knife with his right hand, or yeah, it's his right hand, right? He raises it up with his right hand and then stabs. And if you notice, there's times where Stu holds it with both his hands. He brings both hands up and then brings it down. And I feel like that kind of plays out to like with Wes Craven saying like, "Oh, this is this killer, this is this other killer," And it's.
I wonder if that was incidental or if that's a plan that they actually made. I think just knowing him and how he makes his movies, it must be a specific clue that he intended.
Definitely, I could definitely see Wes Craven doing that. So you see Casey, trying to scream at her parents and everything, and they're like, "Oh, let's look at the plans that are conveniently on the other side, opposite from
her
our daughter."
parents came home at this point. They see that the house is broken into. The fire alarm is going off because the popcorn is burning.
Poor popcorn.
She tried to scream. She can't really get a scream out. I think that knife thrust that penetrated near her heart must have also penetrated her lung.
I could see that, but
And that's why she has no breath.
Yeah, whenever Billy goes to strangle her, I remember hearing like a knife sound, like a but you don't really see a knife. So was that a
crushed her
stab?
wooden pipe.
Oh, okay, I could see that. Yeah,
that could be why she couldn't scream too.
And then this is the point where the audience realizes, oh my god, Drew Barrymore is gonna die.
Yes. So now she's being stabbed over and over. She's still got the phone in her hand.
Mm-hmm.
So horrifyingly, when her mother's trying to call the police, she could hear that Casey's struggling on the other end, but she has no idea where she is.
And gasping for help. And you can actually hear it, and she's calling for her mom, which is very sad.
Yeah. And there's a moment when she reaches up and we don't see it, but she sees. She removes the killer's mask.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
She knows who's killing her. I tried to pay attention to her facial reaction because I think it would have been a much more of a recognizable thing if it were Stu.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't seem to have too much of a reaction to me.
It could have been like I know you. And then just
she
died,
would have known Billy because
Yeah.
if she dated Stu, Billy's Stu's friend.
Yeah, exactly.
But
So
she didn't seem to overly recognize him. I don't know.
But I love that whole scene of her just reaching out to the mask with a shaking hand and just fucking grasping at it with all her strength that she has just to see who this is. I fucking Drew Barrymore fucking throughout the whole scene, she's got me like fucking emotional, just like feeling bad for her, wanting her to survive. Even to this day, rewatching it, you're still kind of rooting for her. You're like, maybe there'll be the change. Maybe this is an uncut. But of course there isn't.
It's a horrifying to think of because it takes place in like every town and it could happen to
Yeah.
anybody. And it goes back to that anybody can die thing with the biggest star dying.
Yeah.
But just imagine the horror of that is like, oh, it pretty much happens in real time.
Yeah.
So maybe like 20 minutes beforehand, you think you're getting ready for like a nice cuddly date with your boyfriend, and now you're dying.
Yeah, exactly. And like this is one thing that really sets Scream apart from everything. I know it's very meta and it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's also something that could definitely happen. Like this is something, compared to like Nightmare on Elm Street and Jason and Michael and Chucky, this is something that could actually happen. So then afterwards, they hang up Casey, and
Which I think again indicates there's a very personal motive there, because that is a symbolic message to hang somebody gutted from a tree rather than
definitely,
just kill them.
definitely.
It's horrible. I can't imagine what her parents must be.
Yeah, and and I've told you this. The scene that really fucking creeped me out as a kid, and today is still kind of unnerving to watch, is seeing the dad run to the body as the mom screams in the background, and then you see his POV of him getting really close to the body as it goes black, and it's like sped up and shit, so it's going like really fast, and you're like, "Fuck, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this." For those that aren't into gore.
Yeah.
So then this
It's
is
terrifying.
yeah, exactly. So this is where we usually get this title card, but because this is the first one they put at the very beginning before the opening, we get to meet Sydney.
Yep, and we can establish right away that Sydney seems like she might be the ideal final girl, but also we don't know because Drew Barrymore
Yeah,
died. So
exactly.
anybody can die.
So this is where the
And-
person in the theater is screaming like, "Oh, this bitch is gonna die next."
Right, and so this is where we first meet Billy. Billy's gonna sneak up through the window. I tend to think that there's probably a little bit of a time lapse between when they killed Casey and when he came here.
I do believe that as well.
I noticed his hair seems kind of wet. I think he must have went home and showered and cleaned up.
Or they could have stopped somewhere as well, and maybe like at a river, just like clean it all up. Can you imagine? But
They're very good at planning.
yeah, they really
Like,
are.
All of this had to have been elaborately thought out, and
Definitely.
we'll know when we get later in the movie that they've been planning this for a year.
Oh yeah, definitely. So that happens, and I think you pointed this out earlier, where you say, even though Sydney is like shocked and she screams when Billy comes up the window, and she's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" You can kind of get a feel that maybe this has happened before. Like he snuck into her window before, and especially with
She's surprised, but she's not completely shocked.
yeah, exactly. And then she has the fucking closet door to the door, the way the mechanic with that you were saying, she uses her closet door to lock her bedroom door. So
Yeah,
that
her
way
bedroom door doesn't have a lock, so she's found a way to jam her closet door into the door jamb so that you can't open her bedroom door.
I always felt she did have a lock on her bedroom, but it was like easy to open, if you like pushed hard enough. So that's why
Either way,
yeah.
she knew she would have to have the fail-safe for that, which is why I think they must have done this before, and they must have either been caught or almost caught by her father before, because she's got this like system worked out with the closet door where she can quickly lock her father out.
Yeah. So then you get to meet Mr. Prescott, and he's like, "All right, bitch. Well, all right, daughter. I'm going off. I heard you scream, but it's okay. So I'm gonna go get ready because I'm going to a hotel. I'm fucking some bitches, and just take her. Here's $1. Have fun." And then he leaves, and we literally don't see him till the end of the fucking movie.
No, which brings up the question of when did he get kidnapped, because we know that the killers are going to kidnap him.
Yes.
I tend to think that the mission of Billy going to the house was twofold. It was to establish that he had an alibi for the night of the murder, because he could argue that he was at why did I say Stefan? He could argue that he was at Sydney's house.
Yeah. And B, maybe he was also I actually do believe this, that he was a distraction for Sydney while Stu was in the other room, or somehow getting at Mr. Prescott. and kidnapping him and knocking him out.
And there seems we'll see a theme going on through this too. That even though Billy has been involved in some of the killing, the roles they sort of take predominantly are Stu is doing most of the actual physical work.
He's a muscle.
And Billy is doing most of the planning and the manipulating and the phone
He's the
calls.
brains. So in this scene, we get to see the relation, the connection between these characters established. A little backstory where he explains he was watching The Exorcist and the good stuff was cut off, and it reminded their relationship where they started hot and bothered.
Hot and heavy. That wasn't always the case.
I said
so
hot
as we'll
and
come to
bothered.
learn, yeah,
It's hot and heavy. God damn it.
So we'll see as the movie goes on that something happened in her life in the middle of their relationship that changed her attitude towards intimacy.
Exactly. So then we get a little makeout session, and then he slits his fingers into her blouse, or I guess shirt.
But he can't go too far because he's not going to break her underwear rule.
Exactly. And then it's established that, so pretty much Sydney gives him blue balls, and then settles for a PG-13 relationship, flashes her tits for the imagination. And
Did she? Because I thought she had a bra on.
Oh,
I think
can
she
see
just
that.
flashed him her bra.
Yeah, she did say PG-13 as well, so yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah,
But
which probably built further resentment in Billy that she still, again, there's another time that she won't sleep with him.
Yeah. Now it's the next day, and there's reporters and everything. Sydney's like, the fuck, and Tatum tells her, oh my god, they got killed. Oh my god. Like, I'm your best friend. Oh my god. It's pretty much establishing that. And Sydney mentions that she sits next to Casey. And I actually do enjoy this scene where she's kind of looking at the seat where Casey would usually sit. And it's empty. Just that one little scene, even though it just, it's not much. It just kind of, shows...
It's kind of a big realization for a teenager because at that point in your life, you're invincible.
Yeah, exactly.
And death is something that happens to old people, and when it's thrust right in your face like that, you're like, wow, I'm really never going to see her again.
Right, exactly.
The finality of it.
I just love that, and it's so great, especially with the soundtrack and everything with, the dun, 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 dun. Can't do it right. And then Sydney gets
called. So they're questioning all the students.
And then we get to meet Mr. David Arquette.
Yeah, as the Sheriff Deputy Dewey. Perfect casting for that, although you said there was another role he was auditioning for.
Yes. Apparently, originally he was auditioning for Billy, but read for Dewey and was like, oh my god, this role is so much better. And he liked it a lot more. And originally Dewey was supposed to be a little bit more serious, not as goofy as David Arquette made it out to be. And apparently David Arquette really wanted Dewey because he got to share some scenes with Miss Gail Weathers. And he had a little crush on her.
Which is interesting to know that they eventually get married in real life.
Right, exactly. And
you imagine having a crush on somebody and then you meet him on a movie and marry him?
Yeah, and then get divorced. But, we'll get to that later.
That happens to 50% of people.
That's true. That's very true. So, yeah, then Sydney gets called in. They're like, oh, we're just asking people in Casey's life. And there's a scene where the principal tells her, like, we're not going to keep you long. We're just, blah, blah, blah. And then he kind of puts his hand to her chin. And then the camera pans to the sheriff, who kind of goes, the fuck was that? And just looks up at the principal, like, get your hand off her. But he doesn't really say. He just kind of looks up, and then they get to the first question. It cuts to, meeting pretty much the main characters, the protagonist of this movie, which are, Billy, Sydney, Tatum, Stu, and Randy.
Right.
At the fountain.
So this is the first time we've actually met Stu. Mm-hmm. And it's the wonderful Matthew Lillard, who's hilarious.
Matthew Lillard is amazing, yeah.
Which is another good disarming thing, because he's such a goofball character, he's somebody you would not expect to be menacing.
And it's
Stu
funny.
Ulrich much more conveys a menacing aura.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because my generation knows him from Scooby Doo and growing up with with him as a live action Shaggy. Meanwhile, I fucking know him from Scream. But
The better role.
yeah, definitely.
This is where it's established that Stu is Casey's ex.
Yes,
Because Randy sees fit to say, "Are the police aware that you used to date the victim?" And Tatum throws, "I thought you said that, till she broke up with." He goes, "Didn't you date her till she broke up with you for Steve?" And Tatum goes, "No, I thought you broke up with her for me." It did. He's a liar.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where it kind of puts in that, like, I think maybe that's the story he told Tatum. I think maybe Casey did break up with him, and that fueled a lot of his anger towards her.
Yeah, definitely.
But this is also where I think that it becomes apparent that Stu must have been the one to gut Steve.
Oh, when Sydney brings up the whole, how do you gut someone?
Yeah, Stu have a very specific and immediate answer.
Fucking jumps in there. Oh, this is how it is. Brings out a board. Fucking chalk and everything. This is 1, this is 2, this is what you do. Fucking shows a video of him gutting Casey.
Right, and there's the thing I love most about this, like, whodunit kind of genre is that there are enough clues in it where once you know the answer, you go, okay, that makes sense. But they don't flash at you like a neon light, so there's still some semblance of mystery. But in hindsight, this double thing flashed to me like a double red light, where he immediately knew how to gut her.
And
which is like something the killer would know.
Yeah, and I told you this while we earlier, where as he's explaining it, the camera pans to Billy. He's like, she didn't really need to know that, like kind of like saying like, "Ha ha, Stu, you jokester." Like, no one asked you, and he's doing those
Stu
eyes.
He ends his thing with like, "Well, I didn't kill. I'm not a killer," and then I didn't kill her, and Billy goes, "No one said you did." And he's like staring him down.
Right. And it just like the first time you watch it, it's like, oh, friends being friends. But rewatching it, yeah, like you say, that's where you can kind of see
those are two giant clues.
Billy. Yeah.
That it's them.
Then it's Billy like telling Stu to shut the fuck up.
Right. The best way to lie, politicians talk about this all the time, is to say a lie right in front, because people are expecting you to like lie behind their back. They never take what you say like out in front as a lie. So the best thing to do is to say like, "This is how you gut someone," and then, "Oh, I'm just joking." But no, that was the truth. Yeah. The other thing I'm wondering about the scene where we meet the friends is Tatum, when they're talking about did Stu kill her, Tatum says it couldn't have been Stu. He was with me all night.
Yeah.
Which we know isn't true. So I'm wondering what you think about when Stu was with her. And if he killed Casey before or after being with her.
I could argue that maybe Stu was with Tatum while Billy, while Billy was with Sydney. But it's like, it just seems like kind of weird for the two of them to go their separate ways, talk to their girlfriends for an alibi, meet up yet again, only to go back to Sydney's house and kidnap Mr. Prescott when Billy was there, to kind of distract her. You know what I mean? So I do feel that maybe they went to Sydney's house first, and then afterwards maybe Billy went to drop off Stu at Tatum's house and been like, "Sorry, I had to take care of something," or didn't even say it. Was like, "Hey, I'm on my way." And then
we do establish that Billy can drive because he said that he was out for a drive.
Yeah, later down. Yeah, when they were there in the definitely. So
I would think that, normally if you were thinking realistically about an alibi for the entire night, if your boyfriend wasn't with you for the whole night, you'd think, I can't really say he was with me the whole night. But being that it's her boyfriend and it's Stu and he's goofy, she's not ever going to suspect that he's a killer.
Exactly. I didn't suspect he was a killer. I really didn't.
So for him to show up at, let's say, I don't know, it's like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, like not too late. She doesn't know what he did before that, but she would just assume he wasn't killing her, and then he was with her the rest of the night after that.
Exactly. After this, we get the scene where Sydney gets in the bus, goes home, gets out of the bus, and some bitch Karen yells, "Bye, Sydney!" Even though we never know who the fuck that is. She gets home, checks her mail, and it's like, okay, this is the scene where we were talking about, where it's like, when do you think the killers were here when she got home.
I think they would have had to have been, because I don't think that they could have snuck in without her noticing.
Yeah.
It's possible they could have while she was sleeping, but I think what's more likely is that they used the fact that Billy can drive and she was taking the school bus to get there first. And if we're going with, like you had mentioned, if we're going with the theory that they kidnapped Mr. Prescott the night before, they probably took his house keys off him.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So they definitely took his house keys. While Sydney was probably getting ready, because, at this point, she doesn't suspect anything, she's just like, damn, this girl died. So she's probably, like, a little, like, damn, like, a little, I'm not saying, like, she's down as in, like, depressed or anything, but it's got her thinking, and she's probably taking her time to, and plus, it's a fucking bus, it's dropping off a ton of kids. So while all of this is happening, I feel like, Billy looks at Stu, goes, come on, let's get the fuck out of here, come on, hurry up, get in the car. Gets in, and then they plant themselves. And since they have Mr. obviously Mr. Prescott has keys to the house, so they probably took them, got in, and Stu's inside the house. I really do feel Stu's in the house. Billy could be as well, but maybe he just dropped off Stu and is hiding somewhere.
Yeah.
So
we can talk more about that too, but so when she turns on the news... this is when we're going to get the backstory that it's the anniversary of Sydney's mother's death.
Or it's about to be, like, tomorrow, I think. Or in 2 days, yeah.
So we find out and I think we can draw our own conclusions that had a lot to do with the lack of intimacy with Billy.
Exactly.
But yeah, they established that her mother was murdered, and that her murderer was convicted was Cotton Weary. Yeah. And that he was put away by Sydney's testimony.
Yeah, who apparently raped and murdered Sydney's mother. And this is all coming from Miss Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox, who's one of my favorite characters in this movie. It's you see her at the beginning with the news stations, like in her green highlight dress, but this is where, she's kind of going through the channels and then it stops her. Right, Sydney stops at Gail Weathers and you're like, why just this specific lady, which we learn later on, but there's a connection between Gail and Sydney as well, and the whole murder.
Yes.
So Sydney's in the fucking house, and she's going down the stairs getting. She talks to Tatum because she doesn't want to be home alone because of the murders and shit. So she tells Tatum, like, "Hey, come pick me up," and Tatum's like, "All right, bitch, I'm on my way."
Later on, she's gonna come and they're gonna have a sleepover. You pointed it out while we were watching the movie. The very nice touch that we see Sydney picking out an outfit to bring to Tatum's, and it winds up being the outfit she wears the next day.
Yes, she's wearing the little. Was it like a red blouse with some flowers on it, the jeans, and then the boots? You could see her carrying it. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but she opens the closet where the killer comes off later. That's the closet she opens, and as she opens, you can hear like a little, like a little spooky music. So, what if Stu was actually in there?
It's possible.
Yeah, because it makes that little noise as she puts it in. So, what if Stu was just hiding there? He's like, oh shit, as she's putting the clothes, I think she grabs a jacket. I don't know if she put something in. I forgot. But then she closes it, and then she waits for Tatum. And she sees a pic. That's where she sees the news, and then looks at the picture of her mom, and she falls asleep.
She falls asleep. She wakes up. We don't know how much time has passed, but it was late when she fell asleep, and it's dark now.
Mm-hmm. Tatum's still not fucking here.
Tatum's still not there. She gets a call. She thinks it's from Randy. We know it's from the killer. We recognize the voice from the phone calls to Casey.
And this is where the person in the theater is like, this is where the bitch dies. This is where the fucking bitch dies. I told you. Drew Barrymore, now this fucking bitch.
Yeah. Now let me ask you what you think about this. I'm going to tell you what I think, and I want to hear what you think.
Okay.
I don't think their intent in this attack on her was ever to actually kill her.
I think it's to rile her up.
I think it was to rile her up. I think it was to make her upset. I think it was to fuck with her the way they like to fuck with Casey. They're getting off on messing with these people. But also, at the end of the scene, through what happens, I think it's to set up that she can trust Billy because he's going to ultimately have an alibi.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So she gets a call. He's mocking her, saying, oh, I'm not Randy. I'm outside, and then she's like, talking about. Oh, they even talk about horror movies. How it's always some big-breasted girl who's stupid and who can't act, who's running up the stairs instead of going out the fucking front door. And it's very insulting. And then as the killer's fucking taunting her, saying he's at the front, she decides to go out there and check it out.
I was really scared the first time I watched this movie that she did that. She was very brave to call the killer's bluff there.
Yeah, definitely. And as we know it, he wasn't there. Billy was probably like somewhere around there, like looking from outside.
He must not have had sight of her because he wasn't telling her what she was doing. She kept asking, "What am I doing? What am I doing?"
He was probably like by. I feel like Sydney's bedroom is in the back of the house, maybe. So maybe he was waiting by her.
He's gonna climb through the window.
Yeah, so he's probably in the back of the house, and he's like, "Shit, I didn't think she was gonna do that." So this is where it's like, established that even though Sydney, because when we first meet her, she comes off very innocent and very, like, "Oh, I'm a virgin. I don't want to have sex," and she's very, you're like, "Aw, she's so cute." So maybe they didn't expect that she kind of has like this toughness in her, like this brave. She's pretty brave. So then
she's brave, but they realize the usual shit that would unnerve people isn't unnerving her, so they kick it up a notch, and they definitely unnerve her when they ask her if she wants to die, and then she says, "Your fucking mother didn't want to die."
Oh yeah, where they're like, "If you hang up on me, you'll die just like your mother." It's like, oh shit. Do you want to die, Sydney? Your mother sure didn't. And
that really pissed her off. Mm-hmm. And there's probably no way to actually plan this, but it worked out for them. She locked the door, and now she's locked inside, and the killer pops out of the closet and is attacking her.
The first time I watched that scene, it actually made me jump because I was not expecting him to be in there. And this is where the question comes, like, has he been there all along since before Sydney, waved to that fucking bitch in the bus?
I think he must have been.
Yeah, I do too. Because
I don't see how that could have happened.
I could argue that while she was outside going, "What am I doing?" That scene, he could have probably snuck in. I just feel like that's just it'd be a little hard. Like Ghostface is quiet, but I don't think he would have snuck through Sydney. I feel like he's been there the whole time.
I think he was already there.
Yeah.
I think it's compelling evidence that that there's two things. That one, the killer does the double-handed knife attack.
Yes, exactly.
Which we talked about. That seems to be Stu's trademark. And two, when Billy does arrive on the scene, the way he comes through the window, he does it so quickly that I don't think that there's any way that they could have ran around the house that quickly.
After this whole little fight ensues and everything, he even runs the blade through Sydney, kind of like mocking, like, "Ooh, I'm about to kill you." So I really don't think he planned on killing her. And
no, the two harms in the air is like, a half-hearted attempt, and it's like plenty of time to counter it. And...
Yeah, exactly. So she runs up, fucking calls the cops. Ghostface disappears.
Well, hold on. So that's great. She had just said it's a big-breasted girl running up the stairs when they should be out the front door. So she runs up the stairs and not out the front door.
She does try to go out the front door. She's like, "Fuck, I locked it." So then she runs up the stairs when he tries to stab her. And it's like, it's such a great, meta scene.
So this is where we established in the earlier scene in her bedroom that she has that fail-safe for the door locking the closet door, locking the bedroom door. Mm-hmm. So she can throw that in there. Ghostface can't get it. He's throwing the knife through the door, but he can't reach her.
Yeah.
I thought this was hilarious. The 1996 version of 911, where you just dial it into a giant like Apple desktop computer in the little green 911. What is your emergency?
Right. And then Ghostface disappears, and then quickly, Mr. Billy pops out in the window.
Very conveniently.
Perfect timing.
I don't know if... I definitely know this was on purpose for the movie. I don't know if it was on purpose for the character. But it fits to that thing I was saying earlier where the best way to hide is in plain sight. Like, when you do something that's super obvious, people are keyed to think, well, the obvious thing can't be true. So that's when you can do the stuff that is true, and people won't realize it because they'll think it's too obvious. He drops the phone right at her feet.
It's like the red herring, it's like, oh, this is just a red herring. So he drops the phone. Sydney's having doubts about him because like, oh shit, you were calling me, and then she runs out the door. Now I do believe, like you were saying, I do believe that he dropped it on purpose just so she could freak out. They would blame him, and then he'd be cleared. You know,
Right.
I feel like that was
Because
planned.
well, we'll talk about that a little more in the next scene. But yeah, I think the entire point of this attack was to A, fuck with her and shake her up, and B, where the ultimate end result of it is to establish that Billy has an excuse that he's not the killer.